Solomon Schwartz. I was born in 1918, February the 15th. Oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong.
That's all right. You can start all over
Okay,
again.
my name is Solomon Schwartz. I was born September 15th, 1918,
And where did you grow up? Where were you born?
in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Well, I came from a large family. My parents were immigrants. My father was from Russia, my mother was from Poland. We loved each other, never had fights in the family. We all cared for my mother and father. But they weren't demanding. I did what I wanted to do with my life, more or less. I always appreciated I was treated that way.
What were some of your favorite things as a kid growing up? Do you remember what you used to do
I
for
built
fun?
model airplanes. I used to build gasoline model airplanes in 1932, 3, 4, in through there. And that's only 20 years after Wright brothers were building an airplane. I always got a kick out of it. They flew their airplane, I think, in 1911, and I flew mine in 1923.
Okay.
I also collected stamps. I was a big collector of things. And I collected stamps and match covers like most kids do. Yes, my father immigrated from Russia in 1894, I think. My mother came here in 1906. They met in New York City. My father was 20 years older than my mother. He met her the day she got off the boat, and he told all the guys on the corner, "That's his, don't touch her." I always got a kick out of that. My father was a stationary engineer, but he couldn't get his license in this country. So he worked whatever jobs, being a plumber, being a builder, whatever. Mostly a general contractor. In later years, my mother converted the first floor of our house into a restaurant, which became very successful. Hardships were very, very bad in the Great Depression. None of us in the family had a college education or skills, and you worked mostly day work, and the average salary was $1 to $2 a day. But we were 5 brothers, so between the two of us, we brought between $5 and $10 home every day. And it was tough and hard, but made a better person out of me. I wouldn't have lived through my future if it wasn't for those early days. I started working approximately at 14. One of my older brothers used to peddle fruit. And he, in those days, he'd rent a horse and wagon, and he was afraid of the horses. And I was a kid of 13, 14 years old, and I took care of driving the horses. Very interesting.
Very interesting. And were you in school during this as well? Or?
Yes. Later on, in about 20, I guess it's in around 24 or 23, I got a very good job, and I was making about $25 a week, and my father wasn't working, and most of my brothers weren't, and my mother was sort of haphazardly said, "I don't know what's going to happen when you go back to school." So right then and there, I made up my mind not to go back to school. I'd just been promoted into 11th grade, and that's as far as I got. But what I'd lost in education, I made in street knowledge. I always talked about being an architect. I liked designing things. I designed all my own model airplanes. I was good on a board with things, but it never happened. But other things that happened that really made up for it.
We'll just wait for the paint plane to clear by. And
Yeah, I appreciate working this way. It's a little harder for you, but it's better for me.
No, it's
You.
totally fine for me as well.
Oh, I love backpacking. My mother was so busy with her children. I used to take my younger sister, I'd be about 14, her 11, and we go backpacking into the mountains for 3 or 4 days. And she would never realize until we came home that we were missing. Really funny. But I love to backpack. I've done it all my life. And I had a full life between model airplane building and working on the side. It was full. No complaints. Well, you always slept with a brother. You never slept alone in your life. It seems the only time I had a single bed for myself is after my wife passed away. I always had company. But growing up was very good. I liked it. I didn't know it was the Depression, and I didn't know we were poor, because everybody was poor, and everybody was living with the Depression. So it wasn't that bad a deal.
And did you guys get along for the most part?
Yes, we all got along very well. In fact, my brothers were quite a bit older than me, and when I needed advice from people, I never bothered my dad. I'd go to my brothers. They understood better. I was about 2 months short of 23. I was working in New York at the time, and I got my draft notice, so I came home to tell my mother I'd be drafted shortly, and decided I wouldn't wait, so I went down and enlisted.
And can you tell me a bit about that day? Do you remember?
It was a very, very interesting day. I got down to the place where they had the recruiting offices, and I wanted to join the Marine Corps, and there was a sign, be back in an hour. We were out to lunch. I sat there for an hour, and they didn't come back, so I went across the hall and joined the Army. But it was the old Army Air Force. Today, the Army's a separate sector than the Air Force. We were 5 brothers and 2 sisters. All 5 of us enlisted. All 5 of us fought in combat in the Pacific. We all came back. My sister didn't join the Navy, but she worked for the Navy Yard, for the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Yeah, I got tongue-tied on that.
That's all right.
No, she worked for the Navy at the Philadelphia Navy Yard.
Very good. Rewinding a bit to sort of the start of America's involvement in the war. Do you remember Pearl Harbor? Do you remember that day and where you were?
I remember it very well. We went to the Philippines, and it took a long time because the Japanese were following us with subs. So when we got to the Philippines, we got there 18 days before the war. And you could read the paper, the English paper in the Philippines, you knew obviously we were going to war. Secretary of the Navy Hull demanded that the Japanese get out of China, and we stopped shipping them oil and scrap metal. So it left the Japanese no alternative, I think, but to go to war. For the Japanese, it was sort of a catalyst, pushed them into it. But then the Japanese were empire hungry anyhow. They would have gone regardless. The Pearl Harbor Day is the 7th, but it's only 4 hours difference in the Philippines because of the date line. So it was the 8th in the Philippines, and it was Sunday like in Pearl Harbor. And I went to a cockfight, and they bombed us. And the first thing I did was jump into a ditch of muddy water. And that was actually the start of the war. They didn't hit the Philippines till about 3 or 4 days later, and they took out all of our aircraft. So they took all the Air Force men and transferred them into the regular Army. We were assigned to a Filipino Army on beach defense. Well, boot camp was easy for me because I was a natural hiker. I'd been on my own a lot, and I had parents that were not hard on me, but tough. So the tough boot camp was easy. The guys that flunked out weren't guys that had my background. Well, we were crowded on a civilian boat when we left the States. There were approximately 10,000 men on a boat that should have handled 2,000 men. They couldn't feed us regularly. They didn't have enough galley. So we ate 1 hot meal a day and got 2 bags a day. One said breakfast and one said lunch. And I'm trying to remember how long it took us to get over there. But it must have been about 18 or 20 days it took us to get there. And the boats pulled into the harbor. I knew we were in trouble because they started issuing rifles to all the men as they got off the ships. And there were infantrymen there and tank men there. We were Air Force. And when they issued us a rifle, I knew I was going to war. And every 10th man got a Browning automatic rifle. And my good luck is I got the Browning. I never seen one. I never knew what one looked like. So I asked the man that was issuing them to me, what do I do with it? He says, here's a couple clips, go down to the beach and try it out. So that was my military training in the Army.
And can you talk a bit about the days following and
Well, the days following, when we started getting hit heavily by the Japanese fighter planes, they were burning most of our planes on the ground. Well, the first day they hit us, the fighters tried to take off, and the Japanese knocked them all out of the sky. Pilots got killed. It was 30 or 40 men, and we were bombed out bad. And the following day, we were told we were going to move out of Clark Field, which was in the mainland of the Philippines, and move to a place called Bataan. It was a little peninsula off the coast of the Philippines that faced Corregidor. And MacArthur had made plans years ago that if this happened, we'd be able to fight better there. So when we moved into Bataan, we set up a front line, and they started dividing different outfits to go on beach defense, because the Japanese would make landing. And I was lucky I got the beach defense slot landing. We set up a lot of defenses around our camp, and the Japanese tried to infiltrate us. And every other night we were taking turns with different men to take patrol. The first night I got out, I caught getting attacked by a group of Japanese, and I fell on my knees and started firing and putting clips in and firing. And before I knew it, the men were up from our camp, and then it was a big scare. A lot of blood and a lot of noise.
you were by yourself at that time?
The first 10 minutes I was by myself. I haven't talked about that exact thing in 70 years.
And how long were you on Bataan?
We were on Bataan 4 months, a little shy. If it wasn't for Bataan, the Japanese possibly would have landed on the west coast of the United States. They had started landing in Australia. Every other place that the Japanese attacked only held out between 2 days to 2 weeks. We held out for 4 months, and it broke up their timetable. It's another thing I haven't talked about.
So that was a very significant.
That was very, well, if they hadn't held up the timetable, the Japanese possibly would have landed on the west coast of the United States or captured Australia. As it was, the Americans by that time had landed troops on Australia, and they pushed the Japanese off it. So it was a big, meaningful thing that the fellows on Bataan did. It really was. Very, very important. Daily life on Bataan was building more defenses. We started running out of food. We were only getting 1 meal a day because beside American troops and Japanese troops moving into Bataan, about 100,000 civilians moved in. So they had to feed the civilians too. So I was taught by Filipino friends how to go out and look for food, to eat roots and fish and different things that the Filipinos do.
And how would you guys receive your supplies?
Didn't have any. Just what we took back with us. Didn't have any supplies given to us. The Americans never helped us for the whole 4 months we were there.
Do you have any idea why that is?
They couldn't get to us. The Japanese had conquered almost every island from Japan to Australia by then. So they had to wait till the Americans built up their aircraft carrier and their infantry and the Air Force.
So is it safe to say that you guys are pretty well surrounded by...
Oh yes. We were completely surrounded by the Japanese. The Japanese had taken Singapore, and they'd taken the Marshall Islands. They took all the islands that were around the Philippines. They took Burma. We were totally surrounded.
And what year was this? What point?
This is 1941. 42, spring of 42.
And do you know how many American troops were on Bataan at the time with you?
There were approximately, I think, 20 or 22,000 Americans on Bataan. So held out about 4 months, then we got orders. We didn't individually surrender. Any American you talked to didn't want to surrender. But Wainwright was forced to make that decision because the Japanese threatened to kill every American on Bataan unless he surrendered. Bataan and Corregidor. Corregidor held out for another month, but they finally surrendered. Then we got orders to march up to the main road. We were met by Japanese, and the Japanese searched us, took everything of value, looked for military things, money. If you were caught with any Japanese souvenirs on you, they killed you that instant. And that afternoon they started marching us towards a town called Marvalis, which was captured by the Japanese. And that's where the death march started. They only marched us approximately 2-3 hours in the sun. The rest of the day had to sit out in the sun. Temperatures of 98 and 100 degrees. And one of my companions asked the guard that spoke English, why were they doing this? They weren't giving us water and weren't giving us food because they wanted us to die off. There were more Filipinos and Americans there than the Japanese expected, and they didn't know what to do with them. So it took us approximately 7-8 days to march to a camp called Camp O'Donnell. And approximately half the men on the march were either bayoneted or shot by the Japanese. If you ran out of line to get food from a Filipino or water, the Japanese would run over and run their bayonet through you and shoot the Filipino. So towards the end of the march, the Filipinos would stand behind hedges and trees and throw chicken and candy and sugar and beer at us. And it was a hard, tremendous march because I was drinking gutter water the whole way with dead cows in the water and dead animals and dead people in the water. So when I arrived in Camp O'Donnell, I had a bad case of diarrhea and dysentery. And the Japanese had loaded us into this camp, which was an old barracks for the Filipinos, and there wasn't enough. Well, they separated the Filipinos from the Americans, but there wasn't enough room for all the Americans, so 2/3 of us slept out in the open. And it sort of rained every night, and you got soaking wet. And one day, going to the past water, I went over to what we called slit trenches, and it was wet, and I fell in. 2 Marines pulled me out. I don't know where they got it. They got something to give me an enema, and stomach enema, and clean me up. But inside of a week, I was out of my mind and sick. So they put me in a ward they called the 0 ward, where they put you next place you die. I was there about a week, and I broke away from the 0 ward and used to wander around the camp begging for food. So I was in the camp approximately 4 months. And all of a sudden one day I was sick and I was laying on the ground. I heard two men talking. They were trying to pick me up. One said, "Let him lay there, he's going to die." And the first man said, "Well, we got orders to take him, let's take him." So they took me out and put me on a truck, and they took me to a camp called Cabanatuan. Cabanatuan was quite a bit better, and they were giving us a little more food. So at Camp O'Donnell, they were sending men out on labor details. So when they finally cleaned the Philippines up pretty good, this Bataan area, they started shipping men to outlying places. So, we were shipped to Japan. Half the boats were shipped to Japan were sunk on the way over. The trips were called health ships. Health ships, in my mind, for me, was as bad as the death march, if not worse. I was out of my mind. I thought it took 2 or 3 days to get there. Somewhere I read it took 43 days because they were being tailed by American boats trying to sink them. On the way to Japan, we had to pass Formosa for refueling, I guess. We were in an old Japanese freighter. So as we passed Formosa, we started getting bombed by American planes and strafed. killed a lot of Americans, and finally the ship started to sink, so they beached it. And I wandered around Formosa for a few days till they cornered me and loaded us up and shipped us to Japan. We landed in Japan in a town called Moji, M-O-J-I, a very contemporary town. And they loaded us onto their speed train, and we were told if we opened up the windows or we pulled the window shades or tried to escape, not only would we get killed, the whole department of the train we were in would get killed. So we finally got to a place called Camp Number 17 in Fukuoka. I don't know how to spell it. And after 2 or 3 days of being told what we had to do, they sent us to work in a coal mine. They set us in groups of 3. They had a morning shift, a second shift, and a third shift. 2 of the shifts shoveled coal, and 1 of the shifts worked in a mine doing the timbering. It was what we call a longwall mine in this country. The shovelers would shovel the coal into the trough, and the trough would put it on belts and would take it topside. Anyhow, we started having escapes, so the Japanese figured out how to stop the escapes. They separated us in groups of 10. And if one man escaped, they shot the other 9. And they shot a couple of groups of 9, and men stopped escaping. There was no chance in prison camp of talking back to Japan like I hear people who were in German camps play jokes on the guards. These things didn't happen in the camp I was in. Camp 17 was listed as the worst camp of all the camps in Japan. Some were coal mines, some were loading details, some were steel mills, some were farms. But the camp I was in, there was no back talk. If you back talk, they killed it. No question. And people say, well, how did you put up with it? Well, you don't go from a normal soldier's life to a prisoner's life in one shot. You go in stages. You're fighting for a while. We were getting starved out. We were running out of ammunition and food. We were taken to Japan on these hell ships, which were terrible, where they feed us food in a wooden slop bucket, and we put our slop in the buckets to take it up. We got 1 handful of rice a day, a double handful. No containers or nothing. Very little water, trying to have men die of starvation. We worked very hard in the coal mine. I worked 3 years, got 15 cents a day for 10 to 12 hours a day of hard physical work. I did mostly timbering up the mines and working on the conveyor belts and the troughs. And we got a little more respect, I think, from the Japanese, because we could show that we'd work 5 Americans, 1 civilian. The civilians were fascinated by our talents, that we would do things. But the Japanese were very tight-laced, wouldn't bother. So after about 2.5 years, they started bombing the Japanese badly. The Americans had built air bases all over. By the time we got topside, the guards looked for an excuse to beat you up. And one day the guard started beating me up badly, so I took my belt off. I had a military web belt on and started whipping them with it. He and another guard beat me to an inch of my death. It took them an hour of beating me. And I had a friend then, he became, his name is John Prokowski, he's passed away. He stayed in, he became a major. And if John hadn't carried me back to camp, we walked from the coal mine to camp about 2 miles barefooted. I didn't have shoes on my feet for approximately 3.5 years. It took me about 2 to 3 months to recuperate. And then the bombing in Japan started to get heavy. The camp that we were bivouacked in was in the southern part of the island of Fukuoka. And it seemed to be a meeting place where the American B-29s would meet. If you looked up, the Japanese weren't watching you, they wouldn't let you look up. If you looked up, you see the 29s coming from different directions, so there's hundreds and hundreds. They bombed Japan with hundreds of planes at a time. And then they started moving anti-aircraft guns near us, so they started bombing the anti-aircraft guns, and our camp was getting bombed. We were very fortunate. The 2 men got killed, but the barracks were getting burned down. But anyhow, bad news were coming to us because we got copies of newspapers that stated that if Americans started landing on any island, that the Japanese had control to annihilate all prisoners of war. So one of the islands south of us, they had a group of soldiers that were from my outfit that were building an airstrip. The island was called Palawan. They were getting bombed badly, so the Japanese moved all the Americans into an air raid shelter, covered shelter, poured gasoline in there, put machine guns at each end, and killed them all. I think 5 guys escaped. In Japan, where I was, we were reading these papers that if they landed troops, they'd annihilate them all. And the greatest thing that ever happened is they did drop the bomb, because I had 3 brothers ready to make a landing on Japan. And the camp I was in was approximately 20 miles from Nagasaki. I was very lucky. I was working in the shaft underground when they dropped the bomb. At this date, I'm 97 years old. I'm sure 90% of the guys I was with are dead. Most of them died in the early years from cancer. But anyhow, the Japanese were looking to beat up guys for any least excuse. You were on pins and needles or on a razor's edge all the time. You didn't know what would happen to you. The barracks we slept in didn't have bathrooms. And when you had to go out, you'd call a guard and yell "make," and he'd take you. You have to speak only Japanese to know English. After they beat me up, I couldn't walk on crutches. They put me in they had sort of a hospital there in one of the barracks. I used to drag myself to go to the bathroom. The crutches, I was so thin that if I put a crutch under my arm, it killed me. But my weight was under 100 pounds. Probably in the 85, 95 figure.
Because you only had rice.
It's all bones. I was worse than those 3 guys. I was in bad shape. I got beat up a lot. I used to speak Japanese to the guys and say to them, Japanese and English, "Skoti matsu." Gee, I can't speak Japanese. "Skoshi mati kurasai." That means, wait a minute, please. Skoshi, American, Skoki's bye. Mucho, I said. I'm mixing Spanish. I used to tell them in Japanese mixed with English, there'd be a lot of airplanes to bomb you. And that's exactly what happened. They bombed Tokyo from one end to the other. They killed Tokyo on a firing bomb more than they did with the atom bomb. They killed over 100,000 people, one firebomb. Anyhow, after my bit with the guard that beat me up, I went back to work. And about a month later, the guards sent us off to work. And 2 days later, the guards disappeared. And right after the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, about a week later, the war correspondent from a Chicago newspaper flew in on a seaplane because there was no, our camp was next to the sea. So the guard, this war correspondent came in, and he told us there was an American air base 450 miles or 500 miles from the camp. And he gave us an idea how to get there. So I think it was September 8th or 9th, we started hitchhiking to the camp. I was very shocked. We were wearing the rags we went into the camp with, and most of us weighed around 100 pounds, where 3 of us broke out. The civilians kept away from us, and they bowed to us as we walked by. And one day in a pouring rain, a man with an A's uniform came out of a house and spoke English to us. He was an American. He was there visiting his grandparents when the war broke out. And he told us we should be very careful because a lot of people lost children. They'd kill us. And he invited us into his house to get out of the rain. And finally we got close to the air base. We got stopped at a bridge by 2 Marines. And I have never told this story. Who were crying like babies, and we were when they seen us. I get emotional. 2 big 6-foot Marines stopped us, searched us, called by telephone into the airbase who we were, and a half a dozen vehicles came out with pilots on it to pick us up because other people were starting, Americans who had hitchhiked were starting to group up. They took us all back, made us steaks for dinners, hugged us, kissed us. Half of us went out. I went out and threw up after I had the steak. It's the first meat I had eaten in 42 months. I'd eaten nothing but rice. No protein, no carbohydrate, nothing. And anyhow, we stayed there for 2 nights, and they shipped us to a replacement depot in the Philippines. As I was wandering around there, one of my buddies came running over to me. He says, "Your name's posted on a missing persons list." My other 4 brothers had enlisted and asked for Pacific service and posted my name all over where I was. So I went to the Red Cross man, told him who I was, and he drove me out to visit my brother, who was a Seabee at the other end of the island. The sailors were crying. You can't imagine military men who'd fought a war and seen the first ex-POWs would react the way. One sailor took off his watch and gave it to me. Another one took all his money out of his wallet and gave it to me. They kept bringing us steaks. They gave us a baked potato, and all my life I ate the skin off a baked potato. And these sailors were running around looking at us, how starved we were. They were eating the skin off the potato. So they kept us there a few more days because a typhoon picked up. They were going to fly us back to the States. But because of the typhoon, I missed the flying back. And we were put on a boat that took us in. We came into Seattle Harbor. We were met by 2 big barges, and with girls on there dancing and singing. And one of the songs they sang, give me one and give me twice and give me all you got. It's been a long, long time. And we landed. They wanted to take me down off the boat in a stretcher, and I wouldn't let them. I half crawled down. I said, I walked up. I'm going to walk back. I'm getting emotional. I said, I'm going to walk back. I sprawled myself on the ground like the other hundreds of guys and kissed the ground. So they took us to Fort Lewis, Washington, to Madigan General Hospital. And the welcome we really got, they locked us in a ward, 40 or 50 men for 4 or 5 days. And it actually took me about a year and a half to get out of the military, where most people get out in 3 weeks. I think we were all mental cases when we came back. I shipped to other places. I finally shipped to Valley Forge General. From Valley Forge General, I shipped to Camp Dixon. I was discharged from it. And if there's any point you want to ask me, please ask me, because it's hard. I'm telling stories I've never told before. They're exactly 70 years old. We were on beach defense, and the Japanese were looking for soldiers that fought at Quinin Point, Quinn Point, at Agaloma Bay. The Japanese, I have to go back a little, at the front lines weren't taking prisoners. They were killing the men at the front lines. So we got ordered not to take prisoners. And between the Filipinos and us, they had made 2 major landings, and every Japanese was killed. There were no prisoners taken. Fires were started. They were bombed badly. They were burned to death. So we had to come up. Our beach defense was down a hill. We were told to destroy all our guns. There were a lot of 155 guns mounted above us. Get rid of all of our equipment and come up to the main road. At the main road, we were greeted by Japanese, but they weren't really frontline troops. They looked like all 16, 17, 18-year-old recruits who were gathering us. And they were searching all of us for, like I say, Japanese souvenirs. If there were any, these kids killed immediately. Some of them were sort of gentle. I wore a hat with my name on it. They called me by my name, so they could. I bumped into Japanese that took out on a march, took out rosary beads to show me they were Catholics. But I never forgot that, because most of the Japanese on the march were very, very cruel. They had orders to march about approximately 3 hours a day, sit us in the sun. Only the first day did we get food and water. All the other food and water was scrounged. I tried to eat roots of flowers. I got sick and threw up. Filipinos were throwing us food. But if they got caught, they got beat up with the butt of a rifle, got killed, or bayoneted. So the Filipinos in these little villages would hide behind huts and trees and throw chicken and things to us. I'm not sure how many days it was. It take long. It seemed like a lifetime to me. They were taken as the guys got to, not to the camp, about 20 or 30 miles from the camp, I don't know how far. There were boxcars, little tiny boxcars that would hold maybe 50 or 60 people jammed in together. And they kept us there for about a day or two, and they were sending people to the camp on the boxcars. By the time it came to us, there was no more boxcars, so we had to walk the balance away after not eating or drinking water for 2 days or 3 days. The camp we walked into was not made for people. It was an old Filipino recruit camp that was falling apart. The barracks were falling apart. There was only, and they separated the Filipinos. There was a road, the Filipinos on one side, and the Americans on the other. The Filipinos were starting to lose, dying about 100 or 200 a day, and the Americans were losing maybe 10, 20, 30 a day. There were only 2 water fountains for 8,000, 10,000 people there. You had to stand in line for hours to get your canteen of water. They were so full of disease and filth that the Japanese never walked into the camp. This is Camp O'Donnell. They threw food over the fence. Well, I was very sick from drinking gutter water, which had dead bodies floating in it. That I got diarrhea and dysentery very bad and was dying. 2 ex-Marines, who were your medics or whatever, would bathe me and clean me up and chisel food from other guys who were getting food because I couldn't stand in line from other Marines. I found the Marines were a very tight unit. They helped each other. So after wandering around for a week or 2, naked begging for food, I was put into a barracks that they had patched up that they called a 0 ward, which they put all the sick servicemen in. After a few days there, I couldn't stand what was going on. People dying next to me. I pulled myself out of there and started wandering around the camp. I was so sick, somebody had stolen my pants when I went to have a condition. And somebody stole my shirt off my back, hit me and took my shirt because it was drizzling. I was cold, naked, and I wandered around the camp for about 2 months naked, covered with filth. The only water I got on me was the beginning of a shower, because otherwise I'd get cold and I'd crawl under an old barracks building to keep out of the rain. And after 4 months, we were dying at such a large figure, the Japanese wanted them for slave labor in Japan. They shipped us by truck to another camp called Cabanatuan. It was a lot better and relatively cleaner, but there was no medical care. The death rate there was very high. I started recuperating. I was being taken care of by a Polish doctor, and I'm half Polish, and I'd speak Polish to him. And he must have taken care of me extra special. And one day I was laying on a barracks floor, I couldn't walk. I saw a bottle of green fluid, and I thought it was something maybe would poison me. So I drank it, the whole bottle. Instead of getting poison, it was soapy water. It flushed me out so good I started getting better. And inside of 2-3 days I was walking again. And the Japanese would test you, if we could walk the length of a barracks. We thought they'd send you to a better camp. They took us to Manila and started loading us on boats to go to Japan. I started talking about it earlier, but they really were the worst. They're old Japanese freighters, maybe 6 or 8 knots. On the boat I was on, it had two, what do you call them, the bottom of the boat? 2 giant rooms on the boat. We had 1,000 men, they put 500 in each one of them. They had shipped horses on it to Japan, to the Philippines, and never cleaned up the filth that was on the ground. We were so crowded, you half slept on somebody else to find a place to sleep, and you try to brush the manure aside. I had 1 canteen of water. When we got on the boat, they let everybody have a canteen of water. I woke up the next night, I saved half of it. The canteen was stripped of me, and somebody was sipping my water out of my canteen. So from then on, we didn't get any water. We were drinking our own urine and letting it settle in our hats, and then drinking as little as we possibly could. The Japanese were feeding us out of buckets. Wooden buckets were lowered into the hold. And we were scooping up piles of the fecal material and putting it in the hats. And they would haul the hats up and use them. They dip them in the ocean once or twice to clean them out. Also, they were letting us out of the hold about once every 2 or 3 days, and they were testing needles on us. I don't know what they were for, but I had so many punctures in my arm, I started getting them in my chest. I must have gotten 20 or 30 needles in the bottom of the balance of the chest.
And you don't know what they were?
I have no idea. I think maybe I didn't have 20 or 30. To me it seemed like a lot, but got a lot of needles, and I think they're probably for cholera, my guess. Because cholera was breaking out all over, and I guess he's sweating it out on the boat. It took longer than I expected to get there, because on the way there, American dive bombers were straight from the ship, killing Americans, killing Japanese. There was a lot of Japanese civilians on the deck that got killed. Inside the hold, I couldn't think of a name before, but inside the hold, Americans were getting killed because 50 caliber bullets go through the metal on the hold like they're tin. And the boat started to sink. They beached the boat, and marched a lot of guys to the docks, so they'd work them on dock detail. I wandered away for a couple of days. I just wandered in, and I guess I was getting fed by the Chinese, because I don't know where the food came from. I have very little memory. My whole memory of the trip, which I understand took a long time, was only 2 or 3 days that I remember I was on a trip. I remember how filthy dirty it was, how we put the dead bodies as the Americans, as they were dying of starvation, in the back of the hold. If we told them that a guy died, they'd cut the rations that much. They'd us down to minimum rations that we wouldn't start a riot, but people would die. And I guess they didn't want us to get out of the hold. They had guards in the top of the hold, because from our hold led into another hold that was nailed shut or barred shut, that had whatever they were carrying to Japan. But it took quite a time, longer than I expected. They put us on trains, were warned not to try to escape. If one escaped, they'd kill the rest of the train, passengers on that one train. If we opened up they pulled the windows shut on us. If we opened up the windows or the curtains, we would get shot or bayoneted. And unfortunately, I ended up again in the Camp 17, which was rated as the worst camp in Japan by the government. Worked 10 to 12 hours a day on a small bowl of rice. If you complained about it, they beat you up. If you were caught out of your barracks after, say, 8, 9 o'clock at night, or an hour after you came home, you either got beat up or you got bayoneted. Very, very strict. One night I tried to take a shortcut to the mess hall. I was on a mid-shift, and you had to go past the guardhouse, and I didn't want to do it because the guards would stop you, inspect you, and look at you, hit you, urinate on you, so we'd keep going. So I took it was a square compound, so I took a catty corner, and I got caught. They brought me back to the guardhouse. There were about half a dozen buckets frozen over with water. It was winter. They broke the ice, made me strip naked, and spilled the water on me. Kept me there in the water for about an hour or two, then brought me inside and knocked me into a 4x4 wooden cage. I was kept in the cage, I think 6 or 7 days, on my knees with a bamboo through my back and my legs, and a bell on my head. And if the bell fell off, the guards came in and hit you. And when you sit on your knees, you're actually sitting on your heel, and the heel presses on the instep. And I got scars on both instep. They shrank real little. You have to look close to see it. Little tiny rounds. You see it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One's round, the one not. They cut open to put drains in there. My legs got to be that big. My legs got 4 times. I had, can't remember the names. I used to know the names of all of it. It's like blood poison.
Yeah.
Eventually, they wanted to take my legs off, and I wouldn't let them. They wanted to take my hand off. I'd got wounded in my right hand, and gangrene kept setting in. And the second time they opened it up to clean to get rid of the gangrene, he sewed these two fingers to this tendon. You see the angle up here? These 2 fingers are set to that.
Yeah.
See how the fingers curled up at the along
Yeah.
the tendons pulled it. And some Filipino but very few Filipinos were sent to Japan. And he came up with a cup full of maggots. Found that he knew where a dead dog was, maggots. And I put the maggots in my hand and put the bandage on. In 3 days they ate up all the dead flesh. So, but this hand's been a pain. But the rest of it is about the story. It wasn't easy in any way, shape, or form. Never had enough to eat. Never had enough sleep. Never had enough clothes. When I broke out of camp, I had my original garments that I'd worn in camp in the Philippines for a year, that I wore in Japan. And actually, it was hard on my family. I was missing in action right after the war for a year. And when I came home, I don't want to put it in. My mother was heartbroken. She wouldn't come over and talk to me. She said, "Look how you look, you made me suffer." So then I got lucky. The war broke. The Americans got us out of there. I got out of there. I broke out of there in the middle of September. We hitchhiked to the air base that we knew where it was. We found American planes there. It was September 11th, I'll show you the money. It's very cute. It's on the money. It's in the book. Oh.
You want me to grab the book?
Yeah. You've seen it, didn't you see it?
Yeah, yeah, we'll get it on.
Well, I don't need it. I was just gonna make it for here.
Yeah, we'll get it on the video.
Okay. Can you take with your camera down the small print?
Say that again?
Can you take small print on your camera?
Sure, yeah.
Well, actually, it's not running, is it?
It is right now,
Oh.
but we can always get rid of it.
Well, 'cause what I want to say, I don't want to say.
I'll turn it off then.
I never showed you this. I got so many awards. I got 2 columns full of it. Does it tell you awards over here? Oh, well, here's. Well, these are not important, but here's where it shows you that. That's a good thing, the flash one, I think. Run it all the way down the whole thing, get it.
Got it.
Okay, and I'll show you the money. This is. See if you can shoot this. This is good.
Oh yeah.
Can you see where it says missing in action? Take his first shot.
Yeah, go from the top and I'll go down to the bottom.
I'll get it where it says missing in action. It was missing in action for a year.
Before they found out where you were.
Yeah. Well, I was missing. I ended up in a prison camp. It was one that wasn't the one I was supposed to be in.
Let's see it. Just make sure I get it.
Well, this is. See, which I think is interesting. This is a telegram my mother got saying I was. These are real collector items.
Got that.
What was the other? Oh, the money I wanted to show you. What was up here? See? I'm getting feeble-minded. Now this is the captain and the crew that flew me out of prison camp, and this is the date. That's the name of the member of the ship. So I think it'd be a good closure for the part of it if you'd like it.
This is Japanese currency.
Yeah. This one's worth about $500. That's worth nothing. It's got scratched out. Jeffrey will like it.
Oh yeah. No, this will be a great addition. And what were their names? Do you remember who? You said they flew you out of there.
Pardon?
The gentleman who flew you out.
Yeah, his name's here right on top. I can't see.
It's a bit hard to read.
That's commander and the crew.
September 12th.
Yeah. Oh, see, I thought it was the 11th. What's that say, 12?
It says 12 there.
Yeah, well, and then here I kept thinking it was 11th. Okay, I don't think I have anything of interest to other people. Coincidentally, these are guys from my outfit. This is a group at the first meeting we had, prisoner of war group, this one here.
Those were all members of the Death March as well?
I think that's the doctor.
Do you remember any of them from your time there, or?
From my time there, yeah.
Did you know any of the gentlemen while you were over there in Japan?
In prison camp, I knew all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the camp ended up with about 20,000. but there were a bunch of camps that were connected to each other. Our original group, called the original 500, I don't know why, but I knew every one of them because we had 1,000 guys on it. This guy, he's half Filipino and half Irish. This guy was my camp commander. That's my wife at that meeting. She was about in her early 30s. And that is Humphrey O'Leary is his name. Half Filipino. And this is Major Mamro. He was our American camp commander. Japanese used to beat the hell out of him all the time.
Wow.
And this is the doctor, Captain Hewlett. He lived in Palm Springs. People know that name. We all had a lot of strange kind of love for each other. It was really interesting. I'll tell you, it's part of life, and I know I had a hard time, but I don't cry about it anymore. Just now I started swelling up while I was talking to you. But I lived a life. This is what life is, you know. Then I meet guys like you. This is the good parts of life. And I got a grandson like Jeffrey. You know, like I make a lot out of him. He's just an average guy, you know. But the people here, and they see my grandsons here every week from me, can't get over it. And I'm living here now 10 months. And this has been 3.5 years since he came back off the road.
That's great.
Ever since he came back off the road and got a car. And he didn't have a car for about 6 months. He still apologizes to me that he couldn't take care of me. But he don't tell people he takes care of me because he knows I don't feel like I'm being catered to.
Right.
It's my own mental case.
It sounds like a great grandchild. Wow. And now, is the book published yet? Is it out?
No,
this is
she's working on it.
Still a work in progress. And she's working with other veterans?
Yeah, there's about 40 veterans living in that senior group in Mission Viejo.
Yeah. Oh, so she's working that whole
She lives there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They're mostly Marines. And most of these guys, you know, weren't in combat. I don't know if you ever knew the statistics. There were 16 million men in the military, and approximately 1.5% went in the combat area. So like 1.5 million. And most guys weren't in combat. There's about one guy, there's about 5 or 6 Marines here in the 80s. They fought in right after World War II. What war was that?
The Korean?
Korean. Only one of the whole bunch went into combat. See, so when I used to go to meetings, and when I met her, she was at the meeting working on a book. It was so unusual. So out of the 40 guys, only about maybe 3 or 4 of us went into combat.
Right.
So they make heroes out of it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm treated real good by that group.
That's good to hear.
You know,
That's good to hear.
well, I was neglected for 70 years. We never talked about it at home, you know,
Sure. It was
because my brothers were in, and I wasn't going to tell my mother what I just told you and my father.
Right. Did you speak with your brothers at all about
Yeah.
their experience?
No, very little. Just the one I met, my brother Izzy. And my sister keeps telling me, he's dead too now. He says I was his hero. He was in combat like 6 islands. He made landings on 6 islands.
And you mentioned, was he the same one at Guadalcanal?
No, that was my oldest. This is the second oldest. My oldest brother fought in Guadalcanal. He was a sick guy. He'd been burned when he was a baby. He never should have been in the military. He joined the Pennsylvania National Guard. He was rejected when he first tried. So the National Guard was going into the Pennsylvania National Guard on Monday. He joined it on Saturday night. And he got in. They never checked him. He had leaking ears. He had bad eyesight. He got wounded. He was right in the middle. Guadalcanal was, I think, the worst combat. Although Okinawa lost the most men. My brother was an advanced CB. He built landing strips. CBs are sailors that joined. They were in the Navy. If they were heavy crane operators, equipment operators, and as soon as they started taking an island, the Americans would build an airstrip. They'd only own half an island. They had an airstrip on the Americans. They were called combat CVs.
And they did a lot of construction and
All the
such?
construction, all the airstrips, yeah. Yeah, they had a picture. There's a picture, old picture called the Fighting Seabees. It's about my brother's outfit. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they'd land while there was fighting still going on.
Right. And
Okinawa lost about 50,000 were wounded and killed, sailors and soldiers. Okinawa was one of the worst. They'd lost like 29 boats in Okinawa. The Japs were flying kamikazes. If you see an old picture of Okinawa, out in Okinawa, there's like 1,000 American ships out there. They're only like 50 foot apart. 14-year-old kids were flying the kamikazes and committing suicide. They're getting Okinawa was very, very bad.
And they were pretty ruthless.
Yeah, well, the Americans were just as bad. When I got to meet my brother, he was not on Okinawa, on one of the other islands. I just told you, I forgot. Anyhow, where I told you my brother was, I forgot the name.
Not the Guadalcanal.
No, anyhow, it's on here.
Yeah.
I read. But anyhow, my brother wasn't there. I had to wait 2 days for him. He and two other sailors went up with just knives to kill cave Japanese. There were still like 1,000 Japanese in caves. And they go up after him, put their guns aside, and cut him up. Can you imagine a nice guy from Philadelphia cutting up some... The Marines were cold-blooded.
Yeah.
Well, that's their trained. They're trained to kill. I had about 15 flights. I went to machine gun school.
Mm-hmm.
I was 17s.
But as soon as you got overseas...
Well, I knew I was being shipped into a war.
Right.
But they were flying 17s. Maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. But we knew that we were just going to try to hold the Philippines.
Yeah.
You know, they brought extra troops. They brought 100,000 troops in from China to push the young kids aside. They had the young kids originally fighting the Americans, and the Americans were fighting too good. I had never had a fight in my life, and here I am getting in the bayonet fights. You know, I never handled a gun in my life. You know,
As soon as you got there.
Pardon?
And as soon as you got there, they
I was
handled...
on a boat yet. He handed me a gun. I'm getting off the boat. She's a good writer. My wife was a better writer than her.
Yeah.
But she's good. She's writing like a school teacher.
Seems like a nice lady.
Oh, very strong. I wouldn't want to be married to her. Very, very nice. You can't understand how good she's been to me. Friday night, somebody else was supposed to pick me up. His car got banged up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was going to borrow a car, so she was only going to pick me up. She picked me up, took me to the meeting, brought me home and back. That's like 120 miles of driving right around. I always want to get ready to buy her gas. She won't take it off me. I fight with her once in a while. She lets me take her out to lunch.
That's good. That's good.
Nice lady.
Yeah. That's great. Were you aware, and while you were in prison, were you aware that the war was sort of coming to an end when it
No,
was?
the Japanese were trying to convince us it would take a minimum of 10 to 20 years, that they would never make a peace settlement. We'd have to ask for a settlement. And that's what the Japanese did. If we hadn't have been there, they thought they could land 200,000 troops in California and Oregon, and then we would sue them for peace. The Japanese had to make peace at the American terms. They didn't want to make peace. They almost killed the emperor. They didn't want to make peace. The emperor made peace. So, but I figured we'd be there another 2 or 3 years. I didn't think I was going to live another 6 months. I was so weak and so sick. And we knew the Americans were getting close because we used to see 500 American airplanes at a time bombing Tokyo. But up till the last year, I thought I'd be there a long time. And the last year, I figured we'd be there another year and a half, like 5, 6 years. But the Americans dropped the atom bomb.
Yeah.
You know?
So there was I guess, what was it that sort of kept you going and
Me? Nothing. We had faith in our country, honestly. You know, I figured they'd take us back. Yeah. I don't even know. You know, I'm thinking about it now. Just this is what you did. You were a prisoner and you didn't want to die. I don't think there were 5 suicides. That's very interesting. I don't even remember knowing one. I heard somebody talk about suicide. I don't think it was any in our coal mine camp.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the first camp. I would have committed suicide in the first camp. But you see, I started to tell you, you don't go from being healthy, like you are, all of a sudden you're fighting a war, all of a sudden they're running out of food, they're feeding you once a day, and you gotta learn how to scrounge, to eat frogs, and we used to get tropical fish and smash them and cook them with the guts and everything, because the guts had protein in it. And they only had little tropical fish, but we used to dig roots up. So now you're lowered from a step of being a non-man. Now you're a soldier and you're sleeping in a tent in the main air base. Now you're a soldier and you're sleeping in the fields with ants crawling all over you. They have red ants in the Philippines, that big, it'd eat you up alive. You got ants crawling all over you. Now, we made most of our machine gun equipment that we killed the Japanese with some shot up B-29s that the Japanese had shot up in the Philippines. And they welded them with tripods like this out of junior rail things, and we mounted twin 50s on them. I felt, I laughed. I was killing guys and laughing. And when I think about it, I get embarrassed. We're getting off. They were landing boats there that had no engine to them. 2 or 3 barges we pulled in. They cut them loose and they'd be drifting. And I'm sitting up on the hill pointing down at them, firing as much fast as I can. Firing like 1,000 bullets a minute. It's stuff that I didn't even think about what I just told you.
Yeah.
So many things happened. It was all thing. So the case of dying, so now you're lowered to eat once a day, then you're scrounging for food. Then all of a sudden you're put on a health ship, which is the worst thing in the world. I don't know how long is there, a week, 2 weeks, or a month. I'm getting as much rice as I could hold. That's what you got once a day. That's the rice, the gooey rice, nothing in it. I never ate. In the camp that we were in Japan, the people around there were farmers and fishermen. And when tangerines were in season, they'd leave bushels of tangerines, and the Japanese would give us a half a piece. They had a knack to them. They wouldn't give us what was coming. When the Red Cross packed, we got Red Cross packages. We got 3, but I got 3 halves. It was always half. They'd eat the rest or throw it away. They just couldn't understand how to do it. This was their way of life. And the head of the army now, the head of the government now, is justifying. Also, there's a Japanese guy living here, is justifying the Japanese killing the Americans. Of course, a sergeant could have his head cut off by a second lieutenant. He talked back to him, or get beaten up. So he was here with me one day trying to justify. So one guy called me over yesterday, was talking to me, he says, he's full of crap, but they were. But the people used to bring tangerines, used to bring whatever they grew, daikon. There were 2 things. You know what daikon is?
No.
Japanese radishes, sat long, it's white radish. They're in the store sometimes. They're dyed sometimes yellow.
I don't know if I've ever seen one.
Oh, I happen to like them.
Yeah.
But But the people themselves, you know, when I used to go to work and come back from work, it was about a mile and a half of walking. You're walking on a dirt road barefooted. And the people, we used to have to walk 2 or 3 villages because the camp was next to the ocean, to the bay. The people would stop working, face us, and bow at us, and a lot of them would be crying. I'm sure they weren't bowing at the guards. They wouldn't cry for the fucking guards, you know.
This was the Japanese
The
civilians.
civilians, the women, and their husbands. And when we broke out and were going to get flown home, the Japanese kept away from us. They got the money from the Japanese. Japanese were running over us and giving us food. Japanese people didn't want the war. They really needed it or had to stop having children. Japan doesn't have any coal mines, any iron mines, and steel mines. They have nothing. It's a volcanic rock. So they needed Manchuria to have the coal and the iron and the steel. And they needed, there was a bombing here yesterday. What do you call, Rick King and I was shot. What are those? They're Muslims, but they're,
It escapes me.
there's a bomb put up. They needed those islands too for the oil. Where the oil comes from.
Over in the Middle East?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not Middle East oil. Closer to the Philippines. Anyhow, there's 1,000 islands there. They get oil over.
Yeah.
So Japanese had too many people. They couldn't. And the United States stopped shipping them their oil and cast iron, their scrap iron. We thought we'd dictate them, which I had a guy yesterday who thought he knows everything, that we should stop giving. We should. What's his name? The actor, the trillionaire, millionaire. I can't remember names. What's his name? He's running for president on the Republican Party.
Talking about Trump?
Trump. He wants us to surround the oil wells because that's where ISIS is getting their money. Well, you just can't go over there and surround the oil wells, you know?
Right.
So this guy was telling me that Trump is right, that what we should do is stop shipping these guys, buying Japanese cars, and it's all well and good, but you can't do that. The world don't exist that way.
Right.
And if we go over and Bangkok, yeah, and if we go over and surround these countries, it's no sense me even talking about it. So that's how you become a prisoner, because it's little by little. Imagine if people, if they bomb this country, and one of your best friends gets killed, and all of a sudden there's another bombing, and your brother gets killed. It shouldn't happen, but I'm just bringing it up. How would you not only would you be mad, but you'd be demoralized. Where you come home and your parents are living in some shack that are made from the house. Your house blew up. That's what's happening to these people. Look at these people in Iraq that are not fighting us. The Christian Iraqs were sleeping out in the desert with no tent. So that's what people say to how do people get like that? They look so horrible. You know, you look at the pictures of the civilian Iraqis that aren't fighting. Well, the Christian Iraqis, and you look at these kids who are wearing rags. But you don't go from this life to that life. Guys go from this life, like I said, they lost their normal life, they quit their job or their business, went into the army, and all of a sudden a wigwagging on the ocean, you can't get fed enough because the submarines are following us. You know, and all of a sudden, every little thing demoralizes you. That was the word I was looking for. And you get to a point you're so demoralized, you figure this is what you do. I didn't want to die. I didn't know anybody that wanted to die. I think I say I want to die more nowadays than I ever did in a million years. Only once did I want to die, and I lived. I figured God did something to me.
You're here for a reason.
That's right. My wife used to always scream. I was here, my wife was sickly. She spent 8 years in a heart hospital between 4 and 12. And she figured God saved me to take care of her. I took care of her. I used to bathe her for the last 5 years of her life. shower every day, rub it down with oil, go shopping, buy the food. I shop with one eye, those. Right after I fell and lost this eye, my wife got terribly sick. I think I did something to it too. I stopped driving a car. Because when I was driving a car, we used to come up to visit once every 2 weeks, then I stopped driving. Then you're in an old age home like you're in jail. Well, I was very lucky surviving the war and all the other stuff that went with it. And when I came back, my school principal had sent my mother a letter about me, and then he sent me a letter and called me on the phone. I didn't have a school diploma, but he says, you're entitled to it. So I got my school diploma from him. So I was going to go to college. I didn't earn a diploma, I was given one. So I was going to go to college, and my mother was right. My mother and father talked me out of it in a nice way. I made the decision. But they said, you just spent 4.5 years. Just be happy. Don't go to work for 6 months or a year. Enjoy life. Bum around a little bit. But I met my wife pretty soon, and we were going steady. And loved my wife, liked her a lot. And we decided to get married. So I went out and got a job. No, I was working part-time, so I got a full-time job in this jewelry store. Because I was going to get married. We got married over the Jewish holidays, Yom Kippur. Not on Yom Kippur, you can, but one of the days, right before it. I had to take my vacation before I met my wife. So I asked my boss, could I have a day off without pay? Because Yom Kippur came off on a Tuesday. She didn't work, she just owned the store. Her husband owned another store. Could I get Monday off without pay? Because Tuesday was a holiday, I'd automatically got off, and I'd be back to work on Wednesday. She says, no, I can't do that. If I give you off, I have to come to work. She wouldn't give me the day off. So we went ahead and got married, September 7th, 1947. I'm very pleased, and we went on a honeymoon. We spent a week in New York and a week in Atlantic City, and I never went back to work. So now I got to go get a job. I had a few dollars. I hadn't got my back pay yet, but I had a few dollars. My father might have given me some money. I'd have put $1,000 in the bank, so I had pocket money. But anyhow, so I get a job. Job was no good. I get another job. The job was no good. Couldn't get a good job. I got a halfway decent job. It was traveling. I didn't know my wife that unhappy till she got sick about me traveling all the time. She thought it was thrilled that I got a job and I was working. You know, my wife was one of these, whatever you want is good for me, you know. So anyhow, I never could get a good job. So I got a job managing a jewelry store in Philadelphia. And the guy always sent his wife in, had 4 employees, big store. Always sent his wife in about 15 minutes before closing time to wait in the store for him. So it meant I couldn't lock the door and go home till he showed up. Usually it was raining, the door, you had nowhere to stand. This started happening once a month, twice a week. And finally I said to my boss, he came to the store one day, and I was doing the buying for 4 other stores. He owned 5 stores. And I says, I can't work for you. No, I said, I can't work for you no more. He said, why not? If I got to be your errand boy and stay here because you're going to meet your wife here instead of the hotel or a restaurant, unless I can have my days off and I'm supposed to be off, go home when I'm supposed to, I don't want the job. Just like that. He said, fine. I said, here's 2 weeks' notice. I wanted to keep my name. 2 days later, 2 of the guys from the main office come in, one friend, and he said, so I'll go look for a job. They're running ads all over, and as soon as they find one, he's going to fire without a notice, he told us. So one day I call him, I said, Frank, I want you to come into the store. I always call him by his last name, Wolf. Because I was 27, he was about 50. I said, you got to come to the store. I can't come. I said, come. I said, well, if you don't come over, I'm going to throw the keys in the street. I'm leaving you today. I don't want a phone. So he ran over as quick as he could, gave me the keys, and I walked out there. He didn't even talk to me. Couldn't get a job anywhere. So we're living off a little bit of money I had to be saved. My wife had bought a little house. Bought a house on a GI. We bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, a row house, for $12,000. My wife gave him a $50 check. He needed $500 down. My brother loaned me the other $450. I bought the house. Couldn't get a job anywhere. Because what happened, 15 million guys just got out of the military. Every good job was swollen. So I had to go in business for myself. So I had a briefcase and $75. I went down to the wholesale district and bought Spidell bands. They were a brand new thing in. And I bought them in broken boxes. The ones sold for retail for $10 cost $5 wholesale, and the broken boxes cost me $2 a piece. So I bought about 30 of them and started going to gas stations and restaurants and selling bands. Sold all my bands but one in the first day. Went down there, bought some more bands. The guy knew me because I had worked in a jewelry store. Gave me stuff on consignment. Started asking somebody, guy asked me, hey Sal, can you give me a little ring? I only got about $250. I'm embarrassed to go in the store. Maybe you can hustle around, find me an imperfect stone, a nice ring for $250. I found him a ring for $250. I started taking catalog sheets with me and taking orders for watches. There are what they call transshippers. I became one. They would get, like, say, Benrus watches. You bought a $50 watch wholesale, it cost you $25. If you bought 2 of them, it cost you $24. If you bought 6 of them, it cost you $20 a piece. So these guys that were transshippers would buy big quantities. They do it in the camera business, buy from transshippers. Because I was a transshipper for cameras. So, anyhow, so finally, about 3 months goes by. In 4 months, we catch up with our mortgage. We check our money. We got about $6,000 in the bank. My wife and I were saving every penny. I wasn't eating lunch. She was buying. We saved every penny. We decided to go in business. So I rent a back room in the jewelry center. And I got some stuff I bought and some stuff I got on consignment. I knew a couple of the watch salesmen. They both, one was in the Navy and one beat the war. So the guy beat the war, said, Saul, you stay in the prison camp. I'll guarantee your account for $5,000 or $10,000. So Elgin Watches started showing me watches. It's only a year and a half after the war. Jewelers couldn't get watches unless you bought before the war. They wouldn't open new accounts. The guy that was in the Navy, was a captain in the Navy. He said the same thing to me. He says, I stay here all the time you suffered, I'll guarantee you a watch. From, that was Longines Watch Company. Remember Longines?
Yeah.
Big seller, anyhow. They both shipped me watches. I'm buying them at the cheapest price. I'm transshipping when I need money to pay the bill to other wholesale guys who didn't have the connection and make $2 on a watch. Otherwise, I made $5 on a watch. If a watch is sold for $100, cost me $45. I put $5 over the wholesale price, which was $50, and I made $10 on a watch. And I used to sell them to peddlers or door-to-door salesmen. Before I knew it, we were selling 200-300 watches a week. I had connections with a supply house for small appliances. Electric razors just came out in about 1946, 47. I was getting all the electric razors I was wanting. I'd sell them to peddlers and dealers to make $5 a piece. I would sell them 300-400 razors a week. I was making $2,000 a week inside 6 months, where guys were working for jobs for $250 a week. That's how I make money. All of a sudden, I rent a little bigger room. My business gets bigger. I get guys just selling me silver plate and silverware. If you get married, somebody will want to give you a set of knives and forks. I went to one of those places, he gave me a deal in silver. So then I said, where do you get the silver? He told me, dummy. So I found the guy and I started buying silver to a deal like that. Inside of 2 years, I was averaging about $75,000 or $100,000 a year profit. When people were working for $30,000 a year. And in about 4 years, I rented a store, 2 stores for me, a storefront. Guy came to me one day and says, I own all the stores on the block. and I hear you're a nice guy. Do you want to rent a store? This is a guy in a store, never pays his rent, always stalls me. He says, if you tell me you're slow on rent, I'll let you be slow on rent. If you're not slow, if we get along good, you can rent the store. He rented me the store cheap, gave it to me rent-free for 2 months to fix it up. So I fixed it up in 1 month, we had a store. I had a store in a jewelry center in Philadelphia, the best location in Philadelphia. Right after we get off the subway at 8th and Chester. The subway outlets, when people came from different parts of the city, or from New Jersey over, they got out in front of my store. Then my wife got sick. We were in business for a little over 10 years. She had a blood clot in her heart and lung. So the doctor said she'll never live in Philadelphia weather. She had myocardial infarction and an embolism. 999 out of 1,000 died. Myocardial infarction, a blood clot in the lung and heart at the same time. So I said, let's move to California. We moved to California. I had a job with a watch company. When I got here, they cut half my territory. So I said, I can't make a living. They give me all the little cities to show my samples, and the big cities, somebody else. So my wife and I start talking, so I get a job managing a store in Santa Monica. And I was making eat money and paying rent, making maybe $300, $350 a week. I come home one day and my wife feeds me dinner. She brings in a sterling silver dish with a cover on it, like they see in the movies. And she opens it up. It's a piece of paper I open up. That's a lease for a jewelry store in Beverly Drive, for a store in Beverly Drive, a little store. About this big. I had 3 showcases and 2 that way and 2 that way. And all of a sudden I'm making money. I meet Red Buttons. I knew him in New York. He's starting to, you know who Red Buttons was? Oh. 50 years ago, he's like the top comedian in America. He did a movie, like 10 movies a year. And they used to have what they have, roasting guys when he quits a job at someplace. And he was always the guy who made the roast Red Buttons. And all of a sudden, I got customers coming from the movie industry. Red Buttons sent us in. You'll give us a deal on a watch. I didn't have a lot of stock. I got stuff in consignment from New York. The watch company sold me watches again. And I had big selections of watches. So, gave people 30 off on a watch. Who did you know to give you 30 off on a name brand watch today? If you wanted to buy a Rolex, who could you get a watch from? So people were sending me people. So I gave 20 off. The guy was nice to me, I gave him 30 off. Well, if you came off the window yourself, my jewelry store, the big store, was in the middle of Van Cleef and Arpels, Tiffany's, 5 big name stores. If you walked in off the street, even if you wanted to pay full price, before you walked out the door, we gave you 20 off. Everything in the store is marked up 50 off, double. So if you bought a watch for $1,000, we gave it to you for 80. We still made 30. We were selling jewelry and selling watches coming out of our ears. And inside of a few months, I used a little money I got out of the other business and moved it here. We were out of money. We were broke. I was 2 months behind on my rent. They had a sticker on the window. It's called a levit, telling you to move. They're selling you merchandise. So they got to take it over. If I don't pay them the back rent and new rent. And all of a sudden, I started getting customers. And I hustled. I went out every day. Left my wife in the store. She almost got robbed. All you got to do is work hard and save, and you'll have money. Really. And I worked hard here. I live in a nice apartment. I don't have to worry about being broke. A lot of my friends lived in places like Reno, because Reno was very cheap. So the guys got out of the prison camp, and they only got like a $200 a month pension, a $100 a month pension. They couldn't make it, so they lived in Reno. Because Reno, you could go to the clubs and get a dinner for 99 cents in the old days. You get dinners. You can go in top clubs in Vegas 50 years ago, and for $3.95 get a meal to suck in. They don't do it anymore. And I worked hard, and I worked, and treated customers good. Told people if they bought something, if your husband don't like it, your wife don't like it, return it, we'll give you back your money. I learned that from my wife. She only bought from department stores. I says, why don't you buy from little stores? Well, you buy from a little store, you want to give the guy a break. He gives it stalls when you come in to get your money back. You go to the department store, they take it back. So I learned. Anybody I met him the first time or 50th time, I had a lot of help. And it was like a maitre d' used to say, whoever you buy a gift for, don't like it, please return it. People come in to return a piece of jewelry, I'd say to my secretary, oh, so-and-so will give you the receipt, give them a check. And they'd say, oh, I don't want it, I want to pick out something else. And we took things back, gave refunds, gave discounts. I did good special order work, I was a good designer. And I did another smart thing, I'll tell you, it's hard to believe. I had the first black salesperson in the Beverly Hills Jewelry Center. Anita Hill, I don't know you know who she was. Her sister was a maid I hired for daily cleaning the store in my house, worked for me for 35 years. She became the assistant manager of my store. Half the black people in music business were my customers. So in life, if you give a lot, I'm telling you, you get back.
You gave an awful lot.
Yeah. And like I say, when we're discussing wives, you'll have to do the things that she likes, because she's doing what you like right now, because that's a woman's way to please the guy. And you got to feel in your heart she gave you whatever they want to do, you'll do.
That's great advice.
I guess I got old and I give advice. I'm very lucky I've lived this long. I really am. I was hurt so bad in prison camp. I was so beat in prison camp. I was so sick at times. When I came back, I still had diarrhea and dysentery. I was a salesman on the road. I'd get attacked in the middle of driving. I'd have to go behind a bush and have a VM, or I did all of my clothes. It took me 5 or 10 years to get the bug out of my system. There was a big electric company near my store. There's a big, people print the Saturday Evening Post near my store. One of my oldest brothers was working at for the government at the Signal Corps, big place. The other brother was still in the Navy. Everybody was sending me business. And every customer of mine, or most every customer, became my salesperson. For nothing. They were getting me business. When I sold this business in Beverly Hills, I have the ad anywhere. I might have thrown it out. I've been throwing stuff away. Big, beautiful ad, quarter page, about senior partner in jewelry store retiring after 40 years. Everything half off. No markups, no deals, no nothing. I advertised on radio then, because I'm retired 33 years. The cheapest radio I could get was mostly nighttime radio, but they gave you a couple day calls, which are no good on radio. And I had 2 calls like at 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. I had people coming from Seattle to buy jewelry from me. I've had people from San Francisco. Unbelievable. Absolutely, people knew me. I gave them all half off. Gave them all a legitimate deal. My partner didn't like the deal. He didn't like me quitting either. I quit because of my partner, but my partner was crooked. He was doing things wrong. Personal friends would come in, want to buy a diamond. He changed the ticket. It was a $5,000 ring. He put $6,000 on it and gave it to his friend for $5,500. Say it's cost. He did things. I was up to here, and the sun was always coming in late. I just had a heart operation, and my rib cage isn't healed. It never healed. I'm broken to here. You feel a rib, a sternum, and a rib. Well, I had 3 operations that broke. It won't scare you. Run your hand down, son. You'll feel hard wires. Feel the wires?
Yeah.
They're as thick as a hanger wire. The wires they put in your chest are thinner than a staple wire. They're very thin.
Wow.
They kept breaking on me. I landed over 1,000, didn't land it, I hooked it and cut loose at the boat. Over 1,000-pound black marlin in Hawaii
No way.
with this bad chest.
No way.
Well, because you don't fish with your chest. You pull a rod, it's a different thing. I used to catch, I never fished with line over 50 pounds with 300-400-pound fish. For 30, 40 pounders, I used 15-pound line, real light, because it was an art. But anyhow, I got very lucky, and life has been good to me. Really good. I have a daughter and three grandchildren. My daughter did what rich people do, ruined all three of them. Jeffrey straightened himself out. And the youngest one is a girl. She's not wrong, but she doesn't understand guys like you and guys like me, and people hustle for a deal. They don't understand the word hustle. It's like telling a doctor or a psychiatrist they're a hustler. Well, they hustle to go to school to get the profession they can make big money.
Sure.
That's what hustling is. You make sure your face gets seen. My son-in-law was making $1 million a year when he was in business. He had about 10 years of $1 million. Then he went in partners, and I don't know what he made the partnership years, but $100,000 a year. There was nothing those kids could want. Jeffrey's been to Europe 3 times. He was 10 years old, he went to the theater. She took him to the theater, he could care less, to see the Mask play. I said, Jeffrey's one of the best plays you'll ever see. What is it called?
The Phantom?
Phantom of the Opera. She took him Saturday night with a girlfriend off, you know. It's like she's showing the world she's still got a lot of money. He split up with his partners. His partners told him to do dumb and blind. Partners are dangerous. They're very dangerous. My mother was right. She said, the only partner is your wife. He's not even your family. It's a hard thing to tell you because you got a brother you eventually go on partners with. Maybe. It ain't them. It's circumstances and systems. Some it's gambling. The worst thing in the world you can do is be a gambler. This is my father's words. My father used to play bridge with me. He played anything that wasn't a gamble. Yeah, I played bridge, played a little too. My mother used to play. Gamblers don't have a bottom. If you cheat on your girlfriend, you cheat on your wife, so much cheating you can do. Really only so much drinking you can do. If you drink so much, you become a street bum, but that's a little percentage. You think there's a lot of bums, maybe 0.1% of America's bums, you know. But if you're a gambler, there's no bottom. I see a show this morning, I was embarrassed. A girl had her mother killed because they were both gamblers and both using drugs. And her mother had the money. She hired a guy to kill her wife. It was on American Greed or one other show, whatever show. People gamble, they lose, they have no control of anything. Some guys are that way for women, for a wife, you know, but not really. You know, my wife didn't do the things I wanted to, but she was a wife. That's the only partner a person should have. But you know, I was supposed to go and bread partners with my younger brother, the one that left all the money. He was working for his father-in-law. So when I gave up my business in Arizona, I didn't come here first. In Philadelphia, I didn't come here first. We went to Tucson and I rented a gorgeous house for nothing with a swimming pool up in the hills. And I was looking for a place for my brother and I to go in business. My brother offered me a deal. I had a little money. He says, we're always tight for money, Sal. We'll give you 10%. Banks were charging 5 then. We'll give you 10% on a large amount. And you'll carry it and you'll get 10% and we'll give you a job. I said, you gotta be kidding, Bobby. So he said, well, my father-in-law, who's my partner, He was working for his father-in-law. One, give me a partnership. And we already got a business. Why do I have to go in business with you? I got very ultra lucky in life. I had a jewelry store in Philadelphia originally, and my wife developed a blood clot in her heart and her lung. And when she got better, the doctor advised we move to a warm climate. So we moved to California. Hard to find anything. I didn't know anybody, couldn't get a job, couldn't do anything. So I got a little job working at a jewelry store in Santa Monica. I came in for dinner that night, and my wife served dinner, and then she brought out a silver plate with a cover on it and put it in front of my dessert. I lifted the cover, and there was a piece of paper, and the piece of paper was a lease to a jewelry store on Beverly Drive. Unbelievable. Till today, I don't know how she got it. I got this lease, and we opened up a jewelry store, and we made a little living, struggle, because I didn't know anybody, and it was hard, and I didn't have the right things for Beverly Hills. I didn't realize kind of a city it was. And then my wife had gotten friendly with young Nancy Sinatra, and she called my wife and said, "Betty, I just finished a picture called Speedway, and normally we give gifts to motors, the directors, the stewards, whoever help us. I need some things. Put an assortment of things in your bag, and I'll leave a note at the gate, and I'll let you in." So Betty went down to the gate the next day with a suitcase full of, I'd say, more than 50% of the dollar value of my business. And she went in and sat down with Nancy, and Nancy bought a dozen or so things for gifts she needed. And a tall gentleman walked in, and Betty said she was sitting down low and looking up, and he looked like he was a giant. And he was playing a little baby harmonica that was inside of his mouth. So she asked to see it, and he opened up his mouth and showed it, and they got a little sociable, and he wanted to know what all the jewelry was doing on the coffee table. So Nancy said she was buying it for gifts. So I said, "Oh, I never bought any gifts." He says to my wife, "I'll buy everything Nancy doesn't take." It was $63,000, I think. And she excused herself, ran to the phone and called me, said, "Saul, can I take a check?" Because checks for movie actors had a common thing to bounce. If they bounced that check, I'd have to jump off a bridge. Anyhow, a check cleared, and a couple of weeks later, Elvis was walking by with Joseph Esposito and a couple of his bodyguards, and they were looking in the window and started to sprinkle. So I stuck my head out and said, "Elvis, don't stand out there and get wet. Come on in." He came in and started looking and looking, and I heard him say to Joe, "Isn't that nice lady Schwartz that I met when I bought all that jewelry?" Joe said yes. And he came over and hugged me and raved me about my wife. Bought some jewelry and went home. The next day he came in, I think he spent maybe $35,000, a tiny shopping spree for Elvis. And it seemed to be every day he was in town, he'd come to visit me, visit the store, buy some jewelry. And he didn't buy like a dummy. When he'd come, crowds would gather outside my store. And before closing, Elvis would come in and they'd score him in too. And Elvis wouldn't say anything. They'd buy a few things, and Elvis would look around. And when they all left, he'd say to me, "I'll take that, 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 and that." He knew what he liked. And I did a lot of things for Elvis, and it worked both ways. I'll never forget the day Elvis owned a lion neck lavalier for a man. The big lion's head at the bottom and 4 lions head up the side. And he didn't know what to do with it. It was when he was wearing capes. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of Elvis with a cape. And he couldn't figure out how to hook it onto the cape. I said, "Elvis, go sit in my office." He used to like to sit in my office and have a cognac. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." I ran across the street. There was a Woolworth 5 and dime that day. And I bought little hooks and a needle and thread. I came back inside the hooks, made them a little bigger, and sewed them on. And then Elvis put on a cape, and he put the lion, opened it up and back, the 2 parts of the cat sheet, put on there. Elvis had it for quite a few years. He never gave it away. And about 2 years after I retired, maybe about 30 years ago, a gentleman called me and wanted to know if I had made that. And I said, yes. He said, you know, if you looked at it, you had made it? I said, yes. He says, Elvis gave it to me as a gift years ago, and I have a customer who wants to buy it, wants to prove that something that was Elvis's. So I says, fine. He said, he didn't ask me what I charged. So I says, well, when can we get together? He said, over at the hotel. So I made a date for a couple of days later. I went over to the hotel, had a couple of martinis, bought me lunch, a couple more martinis. My wife had filled out the whole thing, and I signed it in front of him. My wife typed up a form. This is Elvis Presley's, and Saul Schwartz sold it to him this time and this time. And I signed it. The man says to me, how much do I owe you? I says, well, you just bought my lunch. I've had that happen to me once, and I always wanted to do it to somebody else. And he grabbed a handful of hundreds out of his pocket, and I wouldn't take it, and he couldn't thank me enough.
Excellent.
It's 100% true stories. I live and breathe, and I hope other people get the same feeling. I had a marvelous feeling.
Excellent. Excellent.
And it's true. It's true. What I want to. But it isn't then. It's the thing. The thing is, I think you sort of have to change your lifestyle. My wife never got mad at me if I was late with a customer. Like you hear girls get mad at their boyfriends or husbands. They try to explain them I was with a client, you know. And you know, I guess her mother must have told her, making a living comes first than being late or early. You got to take. If you take care of business, I'm telling you again, my Christmas tales. Take care of business, the business take care of you. If your work is great, they'll come looking for you all over.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah. Well, hey, anybody shows me wedding pictures I'm coming to you for, I'm opening celebration pictures and running for governor. And I put a magnifying glass with a light on it and see what that picture, the detail in that picture you gave me is like. You know, it's got to start out with a good photograph. Although they can screw it up a little, make it look
Sure.
like.
A great subject too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I used to be. I'm starting to get. That front shot is a great subject shot.
Which one? I'm sorry.
The one that's my front, the one you took.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I got the smaller one. The front shot is marvelous on that. But I saw a side shot in this batch here. Terrible. And I used to have a good looking nose.
Mm-hmm.
I think I drank too much. You know, your nose gets bigger from drinking.
Really?
I think so. My mother used to tell clients, she'd say, this guy's a boozer and this guy's not. Maybe they were real bad clients, I don't know. But my nose was thinner than yours. Getting older, got fatter. Maybe it's nature.
Well, I heard that your nose and your ears never stop growing.
Yeah. I had somebody say that to me about my ears.
Yeah.
That you got big ears.
Yeah.
Or maybe the nose does still grow. Well, I was surprised when I was invited to go, and it was a big shock.
Mm-hmm.
I really was. I'd heard about it, and all of a sudden I got a call. We were going to take you on a flight. I met
Craig.
Chris?
Craig?
Craig.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, of all the situation like I was in for 3 days, going on a trip, and I have never in my entire life seen it done so well. There wasn't one bad thing happened. Nobody fell, nobody hollered, nobody got drunk. The buses were on time, the meals were on time, the flights were on time. It was absolutely marvelous. Got up in the airplane to go to the bathroom. Two of the ladies that were helping us, one got in front of me and one got in back of me to make sure I didn't fall. It was done really beautiful. And I think anybody is lucky enough and has the opportunity to go should go. It's marvelous to people, everything. I'll probably never get over it. Really. It was nice.
That's great.
It was handled good. And it made me feel like a hero. And I tell this story when I came back from overseas. I was put into a hospital ward. And here, 70 years later, they did the right thing. When I got out the second floor of the airport, I was ready to cry. Everybody at the airport was welcoming me home. It was such a thrill. It never happened to me in my life. So I guess if people wait long enough, good things happen. But anyhow, I've been lucky in life. Met a lot of nice people, had a lot of bad things, but the good things overcame the bad things. I'm living a little bit too long, I think. You know, I'm getting old, and a couple of years I'll be 100. And even to me, that's old. But if I can walk a little bit and see, I'm fine. I went in the military. I was 23 years old in 1940. Draft notices were being shipped to everybody, and I didn't want to wait, so I went down and enlisted. I ended up in the Philippines, and Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and about 5 hours later they attacked the Philippines, destroyed the same way all of our airplanes, all of our gun positions, and ended up pushing it back into a place called Bataan on the side of the island of the Philippines. We fought there for quite a while, and they were starting to break through, and MacArthur moved us all into Bataan because he put us in a narrow space to be able to fight. I had the misfortune of being captured and making the Bataan Death March, and being in a Japanese prison camp also for quite a long time, 42 months. Very sick, weighing under 100 pounds, because beside the Death March and being starved in Japan, I worked doing slave labor in a coal mine. I ended up in Japan, approximately 20 miles from the Nagasaki bomb. I was lucky I was underneath and came out of it alive. From a little tiny store that I had with a couple of showcases, I ended up in the next door store that had been a railroad office with 20 showcases in the store. An enormous, rug-covered, beautiful store. And I had a jewelry store in Beverly Hills, fortunately, for over 30 years, and I developed a beautiful name. It was Elvis's Beverly Hills Jewelry. Since I came back, beside the years that was near death in prison camp, I had 4 sessions. I've had 4 heart sessions. The first one, I had a quadruple bypass, and I died a day and a half later in the room. They came in and gave me a shot in the arm and the paddles on me and brought me back to life. The next one, they put 6 splints in my arteries. And then 5 years ago, I assume it was, I was just opening a door and I fell on my nose and I died. I was very lucky. I had what they call, it's like heart failure, deep heart. Yeah. Well, anyhow, they had to put a pacemaker. Gee, my memory's terrible. They had to put a pacemaker in me and a defibrillator and a computer. When the doctor wants to check how I'm doing, he picks up the phone and calls me, and I put the phone in my instrument. So I've been very fortunate in life, and I've made a lot of nice friends. I got a really lovely young man sitting in front of me. I wish he was 70 years older. I don't wish it on you. 70 years older would make him almost my age. No, make you a little older. No, almost.
Yeah.
But the trip was something, I just can't tell enough about it. Everything they did was good. They took us to see all the, what do you call the trophies?
The memorials?
The memorials, unbelievable. The people there, everybody came over and thanked me. They thanked my grandson who was pushing me. Everywhere I went, when I came back, they took everybody up on the elevator to the second floor of the airport and made me wait a while, and I was the last one they took over by myself. When I got out, there must have been 500 or 1,000 people there. Always, welcome home, Sal. Thank you, Sal. People coming over to hug me and kiss me. one of the helpers came over. His father had died over there, I think. A heavy-set guy was hugging me and kissing me. So the experience was a very, very wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. And everything was done unbelievable. My memory's a little bad. I forget names, so while I'm talking to you, if I miss a couple names, please forgive me. I'm not senile. I'm far from it.
Sharp as a tack.
Yeah. No, but I'm not 97 years old. My problem is I got a 100-year-old body on a 50-year-old brain. But I'm learning to live with it. My wife passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and it leaves me lonesome for somebody to be with. When he walks out of here, he'll leave me in an empty apartment. It's a beautiful apartment, a beautiful building, a nice place. I can see the water out of my window here. It's the back bay in Newport, and I love every bit of it. But it's tough to be alone. But if you got somebody, hold on.